Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something you may not hear enough, something the world tries to make you forget. You are God's favorite daughter, not just one of his daughters, not just another soul walking this earth, his favorite. I need you to hear that. I need you to believe it. Because when you understand who you are, when you truly grasp what that means, everything about your life will change. This world will try to label you. It'll try to reduce you to your mistakes, your failures, your past. It'll tell you that you're not good enough, that you're too broken, that you're too lost. But I need you to hold on to one truth tonight. God does not make mistakes. He does not abandon his own. And he did not place you here without purpose. You are chosen. You are anointed. You are his favorite. And when you walk with the confidence of knowing that there is no mountain too high, no valley too low, no storm too strong that can break you. Because favor, God's favor, will always make a way. So tonight I want to share with you 7 truths, 7 keynotes that will remind you of who you are and whose you are. If you let these words sink in, if you let them transform the way you see yourself, you will walk out of here different than you came in. Let's talk about it. You were chosen before the world knew your name, before your first breath, before your first thought, before your first step. God already had a plan for you. You were not an accident. You were not some afterthought. No, God saw you. He designed you. He appointed you, and he chose you before the foundation of the world. Do you know what that means? It means that no mistake you've made can disqualify you. No failure, no misstep, no wrong turn can erase what God has already written, because his word is final. The enemy wants you to think your past defines you, but God says, I knew you before you were formed in your mother's womb, and I called you by name. That means your destiny was sealed before your struggle even began. Some of you have spent your life believing lies about yourself. Things people said, things circumstances made you feel, but today I want you to understand something. The only opinion that matters is God's. If he says you are chosen, then you are chosen. If he says you are loved, then you are loved. And if he says you are favored, then there is no force in hell that can take that away from you. See, when you walk in that truth, you stop chasing validation from people who don't even know their own worth. You stop shrinking to fit into spaces God never meant for you. You stop settling for less than what he has planned. Because when you know you are chosen, you walk different. You talk different. You expect different. And don't let anyone tell you otherwise. People will always have something to say. They'll try to remind you of what you used to be. But let me tell you something. God doesn't consult your past when he writes your future. So lift your head, square your shoulders, and walk like you know you were chosen. Because, daughter, you were. God's favor doesn't depend on your perfection. Too often we think God's favor is something we have to earn, something we have to be good enough for. We think if we check all the boxes, if we pray hard enough, if we never make mistakes, then maybe God will bless us. But let me tell you something. God's favor is not about your perfection. It's about his grace. Think about the people God used in the Bible. David, he messed up. Moses, he doubted. Rahab, she had a past. But what did they all have in common? They were favored. Not because they were perfect, but because God's hand was on them. And that's what I need you to understand tonight. You don't have to be perfect to be favored. See, the enemy wants you to live in guilt, to stay stuck in shame, to believe that your mistakes have canceled your calling. But God is saying, my grace is sufficient for you. My power is made perfect in your weakness. That means even in your struggles, God still has a plan. Even in your setbacks, He's still working. Even in your failures, He's still favoring you. Daughter, you have to let go of that guilt. You have to stop disqualifying yourself. God already knew every mistake you'd make before He even called you. And guess what? He still called you. He still chose you. He still set you apart, because His favor isn't dependent on you. It's dependent on Him. So stop running from Him. Stop hiding behind your shame. Come boldly, come confidently, come as you are. Because God's favor doesn't wait for you to be perfect. It meets you exactly where you are and lifts you into where you were always meant to be. Your worth is not defined by the world. Let's get one thing straight right now. The world does not get to define you. Not society, not social media, not the opinions of others. The only one who gets to define you is the one who created you. And He says, you are fearfully and wonderfully made. But too many times we let the world dictate our worth. We let numbers, titles, relationships, and validation from people determine how we feel about ourselves. We think if we're not married by a certain age, if we don't have the right career, if we don't look a certain way, then maybe we're not enough. Maybe we're lacking something. But let me remind you of something. You lack nothing. God made you in His image. That means everything you need to fulfill your purpose is already inside of you. Your beauty, your intelligence, your gifts, your anointing. It was placed in you by the hands of God Himself. So why are you looking to the world to tell you who you are? See, the world is fickle. It'll celebrate you one moment and cancel you the next. It'll build you up today and tear you down tomorrow. If you keep chasing the world's approval, you'll never be at peace. But when you stand on what God says about you, when you build your identity on His word, you become unshakable. You are not defined by your past. You are not defined by your struggles. You are not defined by anyone's opinion. You are who God says you are. A daughter of the Most High, a woman of purpose, a vessel of favor. So hold your head up, walk in confidence, and never let the world convince you that you are anything less than God's masterpiece. When God favors you, no one can stop you. Let me tell you something about favor. When God's hand is on your life, there is no force in hell that can stop what He has set in motion. No enemy, no obstacle, no opposition can stand against the favor of God. Some of you have been dealing with closed doors. You've been hearing no after no. People have doubted you. Some have betrayed you. Maybe they said you weren't good enough. Maybe they tried to block your blessings. But hear me when I say this. What God has for you, no one can take away. Look at Joseph. His own brothers tried to destroy him. They threw him into a pit, sold him into slavery, and thought they had ended his dreams. But what happened? God's favor still found him. Even in the lowest places, even in the darkest moments, God was still working. And in the end, Joseph didn't just survive, he thrived. He became a ruler in a foreign land, and the same brothers who betrayed him had to come to him for help. That's what God's favor does. It elevates you beyond what people think you deserve. It opens doors no man can shut. It makes a way where there was no way. And when God says it's your time, when He says He's ready to move in your life, nothing and no one can stop it. So stop worrying about who doesn't support you. Stop stressing over who walked away. They can't block what God is doing. Stay faithful, stay obedient. Keep trusting in Him. Because when God favors you, the world has no choice but to watch you rise. Your pain is preparing you for your purpose. I need you to understand something. Your struggles are not in vain. Every tear, every trial, every challenge you faced, it's not just suffering for the sake of suffering. It's preparation. Some of you have been through storms that should have broken you. You've had seasons of pain that felt unbearable. And maybe you've asked God, why me? Maybe you've wondered if He even sees what you're going through. But let me tell you something. He sees you. And not only does He see you, but He's using every single part of your story for something greater. Think about Esther. She was taken from her home, forced into a foreign palace, and put in a situation she never asked for. But what happened? She became a queen, and not just any queen. She was positioned for such a time as this to save an entire nation. If she had never gone through that struggle, if she had never faced that pain, she wouldn't have been in place for God's divine purpose. Your story is no different. That heartbreak, that disappointment, that betrayal, it's not meant to destroy you, it's meant to shape you. God is molding you, refining you, strengthening you, so that when the moment comes for you to step into your destiny, you'll be ready. So, don't give up. Don't let the pain make you bitter. Let it make you stronger. Let it push you closer to God. Because what you're going through now is just the foundation for the testimony that's coming. And trust me, when you see what God was preparing you for, you'll understand why the battle was so hard. Faith over fear, always. Listen to me. Fear is a liar. It whispers in your ear, telling you all the reasons you can't, all the reasons you're not enough, all the reasons you should stay where it's comfortable. But if you let fear run your life, you will never step into the fullness of what God has for you. God didn't create you to live in fear. He didn't give you a timid spirit. He gave you power, love, and a sound mind. That means every time fear tries to hold you back, you have a choice. Do you believe fear, or do you believe God? Fear will tell you that you're not qualified. Faith says God doesn't call the qualified, He qualifies the called. Fear will say the storm is too big. Faith says even the winds and the waves obey Him. Fear will tell you to give up. Faith says, with God, all things are possible. Look at Peter. He walked on water, not because he was special, but because he stepped out in faith. The moment he let fear in, he started sinking. But as long as his eyes were on Jesus, he did the impossible. Daughter, you were created to do the impossible, but you have to stop letting fear hold you back. Take the leap, step out in faith. Trust that if God called you to it, He will see you through it. Fear has no power here. Faith wins every time. You are more than enough. I need you to say this out loud right now. I am enough. Not because of what you've done, not because of who you know, but because God says so. Too many of us go through life feeling like we're not measuring up. We compare ourselves to others. We see what they have, what they're accomplishing, how their life looks, and we wonder, what about me? But let me tell you something. God did not make a mistake when He made you. You are exactly who you are supposed to be. Your gifts, your personality, your journey, it's all part of His plan. Stop doubting yourself. Stop shrinking. Stop thinking you need to be someone else to be valuable. God's favor is on you, not a version of you that's more successful, not a version of you that's more perfect. You, right now, as you are, and that is more than enough. So stand tall, daughter. Walk boldly. Speak with confidence, because you are loved, you are chosen, and you are God's favorite daughter. And that will never change. Ladies and gentlemen, if you leave here with one truth in your heart tonight, let it be this: you are God's favorite daughter, not by accident, not by chance, but by divine design. Before the world ever knew your name, God had already called you His own. Before you ever faced a battle, God had already planned your victory. Before you ever made a mistake, God had already covered you with grace. I know life isn't always easy. I know the world will try to convince you that you're not enough, that you're not worthy, that your past disqualifies you. But you have to stand firm in what God says about you, because His word, it is final. His promises, they do not fail. And His love for you, it is unshakable. You are not forgotten. You are not forsaken. You are not overlooked. You are seen, chosen, anointed, and loved beyond measure. You are favored not because of anything you've done, but because of who your Father is. And if He is for you, then tell me, who can be against you? So walk out of here tonight differently, with your head held high, with your faith unshakable, with your heart full of the confidence that you are enough. You don't need the world's approval. You don't need anyone to validate you. You are already chosen. And when you wake up tomorrow, when life gets hard, when doubt creeps in, I want you to remember this one thing: you are not just anybody. You are God's favorite daughter. And that will never change. Now go live like you believe it.